Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button and the share button, and please do follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Why did Doctor Who go downhill after Russell T Davies? Right, we need to discuss this. We need to talk about this. Because I think this is at the very heart where the main show of Doctor Who is right now. Because Russell T Davies changed everything. But Russell T Davies is a man who understands his own limitations. He knows he can write. He knows he's got a great imagination. He knows he's got a vivid imagination. He knows what he wants to do. He knows he has the talent to tell romantic, adventurous stories. But he knows he couldn't produce a whole show on his own. So already in place at BBC Wales was Julie Gardner. And they brought in Phil Collinson. So you've got the trio there. You've got a trio of producers who all know what they're doing and are at the top of their game. So Russell can run the elements of who he wants to play the Doctor, his cast, his story, his arcs every year, what his vision is for Doctor Who. He knew all of that, but he knew he wasn't going to be, getting his hands dirty, directing episodes and the production element. So Phil Collinson and Julie Gardner were very important in that element to free Russell up. Now, don't forget that Phil Collinson and Julie Gardner were part of this team until the very last minute of the Russell T Davies era. Now, if we go over to Stephen Moffat's era, he literally went through producers like I go through bread, right? It was, no one could work with this guy. He was very, very difficult to work with because why did he change so many producers? It became very, very problematic. And so when you look at Russell T Davies, you look that he had a consistent team behind him that basically never changed, give or take a few people. Now, we know that Phil Collinson, Russell T Davies and Julie Gardner and Christopher Eccleston didn't get on, and there was issues in the end. It started wonderfully, but that's why Chris had to leave, because it was just not what Chris expected. Now, I think the problems that Chris had was that they were really new to this when they first started doing Series 1. Russell had never worked on a show like this before. It was using new technology, special effects, and also the schedule for it was very, very rush. So they were overworking everyone. And being a socialist and a unionist, Christopher Eccleston really didn't like how much work everyone on the set and, the cast and crew were having to do. And he was fighting for their rights. And I think that became very problematic. But in terms of the Russell T Davies era, it was near on perfection, wasn't it? Because we all think, as Doctor Who fans, and I'm sure Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall all believe as well, that the way they make Doctor Who is the best. And we believe as fans we could do a better job than them. I can't see anyone being able to do a better job than Russell T Davies did. But Russell T Davies really understood what Doctor Who needed to be for the modern era. He wanted to keep the concept of the TARDIS being a police box. He said that. He wanted it to still be Doctor Who, but he needed to modernise it. He needed to modernise what it meant to be a companion to the Doctor, a companion instead of an assistant with the heightened times that we're in, right? And so he knew what the show had to be, and it also had to be a lot faster paced. The dialogue had to be really, really snappy, and they had to have a reason why these companions were travelling with the Doctor. And also, and even in the Moffat era and the Davies era, the companions had a kind of story arc, which made them more relatable and more interesting to follow. Not that the classic Doctor Who companions weren't good companions and weren't enjoyable, but they needed a good reason for being along for the ride. So Rose's reason was, look, I'm this ordinary shop girl. I'm fed up of my mundane boyfriend, my mundane life. This amazing person turns up. He's, you know, he's this magician. He's this Gandalf. He's got this magical police box. I'm getting in there. I'm leaving this mundane, 2.5 lifestyle. And that was an amazing premise for Rose. But the real reason that Russell's era was so perfect, because he seemed to have a handle on characters, character exposition, character development, and first and foremost, that all his characters had a lot of passion and personality. And I think when you look at Chibnall's Doctor Who, that's everything that's wrong with that era. When you look at Russell's era, it had a character like Captain Jack Harkness, an amazing character, full of life, full of passion, who starts off as a con man, and then basically the Doctor inspires him to become a better person. And then he gets his own show, Torchwood. Amazing. So the Russell T Davies era not only knew how to deal with characters, but it knew how to deal with the space opera thing. I mean, a great example of this is Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways, the two-pronged double finale in season 1. Especially the Parting of the Ways, it's such a climactic, epic, emotional finale, and it ends the tenure of the Ninth Doctor so wonderfully well. And I think it's just brilliant. You're seeing all these Dalek ships, the flying saucers, whatever you want to call them, right? And it's just so epic and grand in its scale. And I think that's why it was so stressful for everyone involved, because doing that episode, The Parting of the Ways, I mean, that's something that the BBC had never done on that scale. And even going back to it now, the music, the special effects, the writing, it all kind of integrates so well together. And I think that's amazing. So it was a great achievement, and it really brought the fans and the mainstream TV audience on board. And that was the whole idea. It was Russell's idea to bring Doctor Who back. He persuaded, was it Jane Tranter at the time? Was it a pregnant Jane Tranter, if I remember the story rightly, at a party asking if he could do Doctor Who? And she said, well, it's you, Russell, of course. I think, obviously, the conversations probably went deeper than that. Maybe Russell's simplifying what actually happened, or maybe not. But Russell really had a handle on what Doctor Who should be in the modern era. One thing it was always was very, very entertaining. When you look at that episode where we barely see the Doctor in it, I actually forgot the name of the episode. In season 2, do you remember that episode with Elton? Right, I forgot the name of that episode. I actually quite like that episode because in Elton, he creates a very relatable, interesting character. And although it's frustrating we don't see much of the Doctor in that episode, it's still a viable, good episode of Doctor Who, as far as I'm concerned. It's not the one we all talk about, of course, in our favourites lists, but it's still viable because Russell wrote a great episode. Russell is a great writer of people. He has a great understanding of people. He also can see how our world is going downhill. Even back then, when you look at the Bad Wolf Corporation and you see the future, all the information being taken away and everybody, having a different mentality. That was foreshadowing into the world that we live in today. And so he's done this with a lot of his projects he's done since Doctor Who. So he had a good handle. And also, it's not just he had a good handle on what it should be as a show. He had a good handle on what the Doctor should be. Both with Eccleston and Tennant, he understood that they had to be funny, they had to be endearing, but there had to be a darkness about them sometimes. And I actually think Tennant's Doctor is much darker at times than Eccleston's, and everyone sees Eccleston as a darker Doctor, but I don't. I think Tennant really showed that in the Christmas Invasion, when he dethrones Margaret Jones as Prime Minister, just like that. Pretty scary that he has the power to literally change her mind and convince her that she's not well and that she should step down, or convince other people that there's something wrong with this woman. There's no darker deed than that. And I think what Davies showed there, that he understands that this is not a pure-hearted hero. The Doctor isn't a pure-hearted hero. This is a person who's lived for many, 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 many years, right? Many decades, traveling around all these, times and planets. And so he's seen a lot and he's damaged by that. So although with his companions, he's like that, there's a darkness within this character. I think Chibnall started to expose that with Jodie's Doctor in season 12 a little bit more, with how snappy she was with the companions at times, and that was more interesting. But RTD really had a handle on that. He had a handle on what a modern day Doctor should be. Yes, he can be charming. Yes, he can be fun. But he is someone who leaves people behind. School reunion and the conversations with Sarah Jane. Why did you come back? Why did you left me in Croydon? And it was great for that to be dealt with. And I think it goes back to Captain Jack Harkness at the end of Pine of the Waves. When they reunite again, he goes, "You left me, Doctor." And he says, "Yes, I did leave you because I'm sorry. What happened to you? Rose bringing you back to life is everything I don't believe in." So he just runs away. That is at the heart of the Doctor. Is something, if he doesn't understand something, he runs away from it. It's like Jodie's Doctor in this season's finale. She doesn't understand what's going on. It scares her. So she tried to run away from it. And in the end, she's been in prison. But that's the whole point. The origins of the Doctor is running away. And so he does desert people. He can be a bad friend. He or she can be a bad person. And Russell wasn't, and even Stephen at times, right, could reflect that situation, that the Doctor isn't exactly a good person or being or whatever you want to frame him as. And sometimes the Doctor does bad things. Sometimes the Doctor isn't perfect. And I think this was the issue I had with Jodie's first season. It was like, because she's a woman, she had to show some character perfection, no flaws. And that became problematic within the piece of Series 11. But going back to what Russell did, Russell really understood what people need to see, what people want to see, that these characters have different levels, and even Rose can be what she was in season 1. But in season 2, she's a little bit more, I'd say, cocky and bolshy, and sometimes damn annoying, if you ask me. Also, I think she became more annoying in season 2 because he knew Billy wanted to leave. And he needed the audience to let go of her. And some of the audience never did let go of her and still haven't. I was glad to lose Rose, to be honest. I loved season 1 Rose. I thought season 2 Rose was unlikable. I mean, there's the two-parter with the Cybermen when they're both taking the piss out of Mickey, letting him hold the button in the TARDIS and, totally taking the piss out of him. Now, I call that bullying. I didn't like that. And if that was supposed to be funny and for the audience to like that, but I think it was supposed to be showing us that people take Mickey for granted. But it wasn't a very nice thing to do. So I was glad to let her go. And I thought that Martha Jones was the perfect companion at the perfect time. And I thought Freema did a brilliant job. One of her first gigs. I know she was really, really nervous for the gig as well. But it was great casting and she was written really well. The problem with Martha was and this is something else Davies did really well in season 1. And season 2, he gave the companion Rose a very, very interesting backstory and family, an ordinary working class young woman living in a council estate, a very down-to-earth working class single mother who lost her husband. And then we meet Pete, her father, in Father's Day. So there was a real exposition and, a closer look at her family and where she was from. Now, when we go to Martha, it's a big family. They argue, they're divorced, but we don't really get to know the family or the siblings that well. And I think that was because Russell knew that he was only going to keep Freema for 1 season, because the original plan in season 3 was for Kathy Tate to come in as Donna Noble and take over Rose straight away. But scheduling changed that and she couldn't do season 3. But all his companions are fantastic. There's not one companion where I'm going to say, we look at Rose, we look at Martha, we look at Donna. They're very, very good companions. And then you look at Wilfred. And then some of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever made, especially by Russell, are the non-companion episodes, like the Waters of Mars. There's not a companion. He's not travelling with anyone. Now, we see the consequences of him not travelling with someone and what he becomes, the Time Lord Victorious. But at the end of the day, it's a better, more exciting, darker, deeper story because there's no one there to hold him back. It's like Midnight. It's a better story that he goes on that vessel on his own. He's totally on his own. I don't know what that situation would have been like if Donna was there. Quite interesting to see if Donna would have paranoia would have hit Donna as well in Midnight and turned on the Doctor. That would have been interesting. But it was an interesting kind of decision there by Russell not to have a companion with him in that episode and to leave Donna to sunbathe or whatever she was doing, right? So he's a guy that understands stories, that understands people. And this is why Russell hit the nail on their head. So he created a franchise, like Faith created a franchise with the MCU. And it was Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood. Torchwood was a really hard R TV show, right? If it was a movie, it would have been R-rated. Sexual nudity, sexual swear words. But that wasn't why Torchwood was good. Torchwood took the character of Captain Jack and really shone a new light on him. And he was able to have him a bit more darker and unwrapped in those seasons. And then when we take him back to Doctor Who, he's a bit more brighter and lighter. Some people said, well, how can he be so different? Well, the Doctor brings that out on him. When he loses the Doctor and the Doctor leaves him behind, and his whole mission in season 1 of Torchwood is to track down the Doctor. He's in love with the Doctor. The Doctor broke his heart. And he doesn't understand Jack. He doesn't understand why he can't die. And he needs the Doctor. Again, RTD linking Doctor Who season 1 with Torchwood season 1. And that finale in the first season when you can hear the TARDIS. I've never been more excited in all my life watching anything. It was really amazing. And I think to lose that element of RTD, to lose that genius, it really told. And I think one of my issues from going from Davies to Moffat was that Moffat did something so different. It was so disengaged from what Russell did. It was hard for me to connect to his Doctor at first and his new companion. It was very, very different. Not bad, not wrong, but different. And there wasn't really a linkage there between what happened in the end of time and with this new Doctor. So even though Matt was amazing and the 11th hour is amazing, it's hard for me emotionally and in a relatable way to connect to this guy as the Doctor because it was so different. And even though season 5 is Moffat's best work on Doctor Who, it's disengaged from what we saw before. We had this bright, inspirational Doctor Who TV show for 5 years. And then Moffat comes in, changes everything very quickly. And the problem with Moffat, he always had ants in his pants. So Doctor Who would change a lot under Stephen Moffat. Again, that became problematic. And people used to argue with me on online forums that, Doctor Who's about embracing change. There's embracing change and doing it every 5 minutes. Because what that does, it disorientates the fan, the person coming in to see it. Because it has no connection to what you did previously. And change is okay, but when you do change things for change's sake, it is disorientating. And I think that was the problem with Stephen Moffat's era. It was inconsistent. And it jumped from, pillow to post too much. Where Russell's era was very comfortable. It was very consistent. And the TARDIS never changed. It was always the same TARDIS. I like that because I think that's the best design for the TARDIS. Very modern, but still believable as the TARDIS. I love Matt's TARDISes, but they change too often. And I think that's one thing I would hold on to with Russell T Davies is consistency. And that's why I think the show's gone downhill, because you had someone who understood what the show needed to be, that was consistent, that was comfortable to watch. And at times, Moffat's era was uncomfortable to watch. It was epic. It was interesting. It was exciting. Well, until we got to season 10, which was a bit iffy till we got to the finale. And I love Pearl Mackie. I love that companion. I think she was great. But and Peter Capaldi is a great actor, but not enough was done with Peter's Doctor. Not Peter's fault. You have to put that at Stephen's door. But that's what I mean. And when Russell left, all that was built up was just binned. And even in the anniversary episode, when they kind of, they red-pilled the Time War, one of Russell's greatest ideas was the Time War. Because I didn't know much about Gallifrey till New Who, because I'd watched Doctor Who from the Peter Davison era. I left it with Baker. I left it with McCoy. I came back for Doctor Who the movie, which I loved. But I didn't know much about Gallifrey. So I didn't know if the Time War was part of the classic series or not. I just didn't have that information. But the Time War is a very interesting story. What it does is, it means they never have to deal with Gallifrey physically, which I think is a shame. But obviously RTD didn't want to deal with Gallifrey and the mythology of Gallifrey. Interesting. I think it would have been interesting to deal with Gallifrey, but obviously he decided to do this. What this does, though, apart from not being able to see Gallifrey, which is a negative thing, it also gives the Doctor this mythology. I'm the last of the Time Lords. I had to kill my own people to save the whole of civilization. So he's got this kind of superhero kind of mythology, and it makes him even more interesting. The Doctor's always been interesting, but it makes him even more interesting. And it was a genius move, because Russell is a genius. And when we lost him, we lost that relatability with characters. We lost the universe, and all those threads that he set up were gone forever. Now, I'm not saying that Russell should have stayed forever, but I always believed that Russell should have had a godfather role, even when he left as a full-time showrunner, because there would have been a consistency. He would have been the one making decisions. If when Moffat was going the wrong way, when Moffat was going too far, Russell could have done something to stop him. And now with Chris Chibnall, if he felt that things like The Timeless Child had to hold back a bit and not delete everything that's been created before, maybe Russell could have said, do the storyline. It's an interesting arc, because I believe it's an interesting arc. But without Russell there, with this godfather role, which I always felt he should have had, it's just like it's one vision after the other, and they overlap, and they don't have any continuity with each other. And what that means is, as much as people say Doctor Who is about embracing change, if you change too much and you distance yourself from the previous era, then the audience kind of find it problematic to actually keep with you. Because if you look at the ratings since RTD left, they went down. They went down in season 5, season 6, they got worse, season 7, season 8. They've been going down, down, down. Apart from Jodie's first ever episode, where people were intrigued about the new Doctor, it being the first female Doctor. People were obviously interested, but once they saw, they weren't as interested, and they didn't come back again. So Doctor Who has deteriorated in popularity ever since RTD left. And to answer the question I asked in the title, why has Doctor Who gone downhill since Russell T Davies left? Because Russell T Davies did the most relatable, interesting, exciting, epic, fun version of Doctor Who of all time. It's his Doctor that's the most popular Doctor of all time for a reason. And once that heart and romance left Doctor Who, it was never going to be the same again. And for me personally, it's a tragedy. I like Moffat. I like most of what he did. I think Chibnall is mired in identity politics, which makes Doctor Who problematic. I like some of his ideas. I like that the production values and the budget's gone up within the show, but that's been problematic. But without Russell's genius, heart and mind, and that's why we're suffering. That's why we're suffering now, and that's why Doctor Who has gone downhill ever since Russell T Davies has left. Comment down below. Like, share, shall I start again? Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back with more videos tomorrow. See you again soon.